going to talk about eyes, and I'm going to give you some tips on how to do some very simple but very nice retouching. So we're going to start. We've got a picture that basically has been retouched overall. I haven't messed with the eyes yet. And I'm just going to make it bigger so I can really see what's going on here. And there's a few things that are really important to pay attention to. Number one, you kind of want to clean up the hair and the eyebrows. And a very simple way that I like to use is the spot healing brush. You'll find it right in the toolbar, right nested right here, the spot healing brush tool. And just tiny, tiny little bit at a time, I'm going to clean up those eyebrows. There's just a couple of stray hairs. Would just make it a little bit neater, a little bit nicer. Not much to that. It's very simple to do, and it doesn't take very long. We're just getting some basic cosmetic stuff done. You'll notice that there might be some little odd highlights. A lot of times that's from makeup or eyeshadow on a woman's eyes. Not so much on the men's, of course. And also, with this particular lighting, there are some shadows from her eyelashes that are going into the whites of her eyes, and we could conceivably use the spot healing brush for that as well. That's a very simple thing to do. In fact, many times you'll find that people have little veins in their eyes, just tiny little veins, and using the spot healing brush is a very simple, very fast way of getting rid of the pinkish or sometimes red veins in people's eyes. So we're just going to keep doing this. And you want to be really careful. The eyes are the center of the photograph for any portrait. They are the most important thing. And you want to make sure you do a particularly good job on eyes so that you can really make them pop. Incredibly important. So I'm just doing some basic cleanup here, and I may have to actually pull out the clone tool to get it really nice. In fact, we're not done with that eye, but we are moving on to the next one. So I'm just getting some of this work done here, and I'm going to have to pull out the clone tool in just a second. So I think I'll do that right now. So another thing that you can do is using the clone stamp tool. I would have the opacity in this particular case definitely set at 100. I'm going to make my brush a lot smaller by using the left bracket key makes it smaller and the right bracket key makes it bigger. And I'm going to hold down my option key and sampling from an area that I know is what I want it to look like. And I did say 100%, and now that I'm doing it, I'm thinking, yeah, maybe not so much. So I've just lowered it down to 74%. You know, this is a constant ongoing thing. You have to know what you're doing. And in order not to create areas that sort of mimic each other, you don't want that sort of mirroring effect. I'm making sure to resample every now and then in areas that I think are appropriate for what I'm up to. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just resampling and I'm just going over these areas. And there you have it. That looks pretty good on that side. Now we're going to clean this little area up on this side, on the other eye. Keep resampling again and again to make sure it looks good. And sometimes you have to make your brush even a little bit smaller to get in those really tiny areas. We're going to clean up that little spot there. In fact, we have a little spot over here. And remember, you'll notice that there are these white spots in the eyes. And sometimes people think that you don't necessarily need those, or you shouldn't have those. Actually, they're critical. That's the catch light. And that is essentially what brings the eye to life. Not just the whites of the eyes, but the catch light, so that there's vitality there. And you want to maintain that vitality. So also, another thing that we would do is we might sponge the eye, which means we're going to saturate it actually. So I'm just going to sort of paint around on the inside of the eye. And all it's doing is it's saturating her natural eye color. And that's what I'm doing. So now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my burn tool and I'm going to make it a little bit smaller using the left bracket key. And I'm just drawing around the eye just to create that contrast there that was already naturally there. I'm just enhancing it a little bit, okay? So we're going to do that the same thing on this eye, on this left-hand side. I guess, yeah, it would be her left. It's certainly my right. And we're just going to make that more obvious. And also, although I did do the cleanup on the whites of the eyes, I can't say that they're all that white. And a very important thing to do is definitely to whiten them. Now you could use the dodge tool. However, I have found that for consistency's sake, it's better to use the lasso and actually select the whites. So that's what I'm going to do right now. And I'm going to use a feather of just 1. You can use 1 and you can use 0. Whatever you use, you really want it to be tiny. You want to be very careful to select just the whites of the eyes. As you can see, I went outside. So I'm going to hold down my shift key and I'm going to make sure that I deselect an area that I don't want. I should have held down, that was adding to, and actually in order to deselect and remove, you want to hold down the option key, okay? So I'm holding down the shift key again to add to my selection just the tiniest bit, and I'm going to add to the other side as well. I'm drawing just as carefully as I can, only the whites of the eyes. I'm going to select this area here, go around the iris. I need to add to it because I didn't quite make it all the way to that edge. This is definitely sort of careful work here. All right, and we're going to do this side. And very often there's a corner of the eye that is definitely more in shadow than the other, so you want to be aware of that, and we'll fix that. But in the meantime, we're just going to add to this selection a little bit. We're going to add a little bit down here. And again, if you wanted to remove some portion of a selection, you would use the Option key. You'd hold down the Option key while you're making your selection. In fact, I suspect that I should probably remove that area. So now we have our selection, and I'm going to hide it. The way that I hide it is I just do Command H, and if I want to bring it back, it's just Command H all over again. So now, just to do a very quick lightning, I'm going to do Command or Control on a PC, Command L on a Mac, and I'm just going to bring up the midtones a little bit. Again, I'm going to hide my selection, and I'm just bringing up the midtones a tiny little bit, and I'm going to say OK. Now I can toggle this back and forth and see what I did. Actually, that looks pretty good. Now, it might actually look a little extreme from where you're sitting when it's that close, but when you bring it down to its natural size, it actually looks quite a little bit more natural, doesn't it? And it brightens up the eyes. So that's what we're doing with that. Okay, we're on to our second step of the eye retouch, and in this case, I'm going to show you a little bit about adding makeup and just making some general alterations. It could be that you want to change an eyeshadow color, or maybe you want to add a little more blush to a cheek, but you want it to look very natural. So that's what we're going to do right now. So we're going to start by duplicating the layer. I want to make sure that I have a brand new layer on for the makeup, and we do. So the first thing I'm noticing is, as I look back at this, that the eyebrows could probably use a little bit of a darker tone. So I'm going to use the burn tool right from my toolbox, and I'm selecting the midtones and my exposure of 8%. And I'm just going to go over the eyebrows just the tiniest bit with my brush, just painting a little bit. Just a little tiny bit. Now that wasn't very much, but it actually looks quite a bit better. It looks more natural. Now I also want to add some makeup. Now she's got plenty of makeup on. It's probably on the pink or more natural tone, but it could be that I want it to be blue for some reason. So I have selected a very pretty blue here in my color picker, foreground color picker, and I'm going to get my brush. The brush that I'm going to choose is the first one on the left, which has a 0 hardness because we want it to be very, very soft. And I've set it for darken mode. And darken mode actually works for this because whatever the dark colors are, it won't make them look muddy or gray or soft like a normal mode would. In fact, I can show you right now if I was to add color here. See how it sort of grays out? It doesn't look all that pretty. We just undid that. But if I use darken mode, it's going to look a lot more natural, and it's just going to add color to the lighter areas as opposed to the darker areas. And so it will look good. It'll look good. We're also changing our flow to 50%. We don't want quite as much color coming out. And we've also lowered our opacity to 10%. The reason I did that is because I want you to build the color up. I don't necessarily want it coming out in one big mess, right? I just want to build on it until I think it's right. So you can keep painting over and over and over until you think it looks good. I'm just painting in this area right where eyeshadow would be. And I'll do that to both eyes. Very simple. You see it doesn't come quite so colorful in the mid-tone areas, but in the lighter areas where you really do need to see the color, it definitely picks it up. Okay, it's very pretty actually. Let's bring a little bit more onto the lid right there, and I'm just painting and painting and painting over that area till it looks good to my taste. All right, I think I'm going to add a little bit of yellow, a little bit of tiny bit of highlight up to this upper area, just under the eyebrow. All right, so we're adding a little bit of the yellow right here with our brush, set it darken, opacity of 10, a flow of 50, and just putting a little bit of a yellow pop. Now let's say I wanted to add a little more blush to her cheek, and I'm going to choose her natural color, and then I'm going to move it into the red area, the more of the red zones, and so I can give her sort of a natural blush. Now I realize that looks like a kind of a deep color, but remember we've got our opacity set for 10% and our flow for 50%, and we're still in darken mode, and I'm just going to go ahead and brush over her cheek with the brush and the red selected. It's very, very faint. And we're going to make the brush a little bit smaller for the other side and do the same thing. Very faint. We could add it a little bit to the eyebrows or the face in various places if we want to. And that's essentially it. That's really all you have to do. That looks quite nice. So enjoy, go out, have fun, go work on somebody's eyes, give them all kinds of crazy colors, do whatever it is that you like to do. But the point is, go have fun.